Picture this. You're an astronaut who just landed on TRAPPIST-1e, a potentially habitable planet 40 light-years away. You step outside your spacecraft, ready to begin humanity's greatest adventure. But there's a problem. This world orbits its star every 6 days. Your body, evolved over billions of years to Earth's 24-hour rhythm, is about to face the most brutal jet lag imaginable. Your biological clock is screaming one thing, while this alien world demands something completely different. And here's the kicker. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality that awaits us if we're serious about becoming a multi-planetary species. Welcome to Mindcast, where we explore the big ideas reshaping our understanding of what it means to be human. I'm your host, Will, and today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and frankly mind-bending frontiers of science, how we might literally redesign human biology for life among the stars. We're talking about synthetic chronobiology, astrobiological pantropy, and the very real possibility that the future of humanity lies not in terraforming alien worlds, but in transforming ourselves. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why our biological clocks might be the biggest barrier to interstellar colonization, how scientists are already building artificial timekeeping systems in the lab, and what this means for the future of our species. Trust me, this is going to challenge everything you think you know about human biology and our cosmic destiny. Let's start with something that's so fundamental to your existence that you probably never think about it: your biological clock. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's a cluster of about 20,000 neurons in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Think of it as your body's master timekeeper. This tiny region is receiving input from your eyes about light levels, and it's coordinating virtually every biological process in your body. Your sleep cycle, when you feel hungry, your body temperature, even when your cells divide and repair themselves. And here's what's absolutely remarkable. This system has been fine-tuned over billions of years to match Earth's rotation period almost perfectly. The average human circadian rhythm runs on a cycle of exactly 24.18 hours. Now, you might think, okay, so we're pretty close to 24 hours. Surely we can adapt to different day lengths, right? Wrong. And this is where the science gets genuinely shocking. Researchers have put people in controlled laboratory conditions and tried to shift their circadian rhythms to days that are just slightly different from 24 hours. We're talking about 23.5-hour days or 24.6-hour days, tiny differences. And the results? Complete failure. Humans simply cannot entrain to these marginally different cycles. Our biological clocks are that rigid, that locked in to Earth's specific rotation period. But here's where things get really interesting and a bit scary. We already have real-world data on what happens when humans are forced into non-24-hour cycles. NASA has conducted extensive studies on space shuttle missions where astronauts operated on shortened work-rest cycles, sometimes 20 to 35 minutes shorter than a normal day. The results were devastating: severe sleep deprivation, averaging only 6.5 hours of sleep per day, massive disruptions in cortisol rhythms, and measurable decrements in cognitive performance. Even low-dose melatonin, our body's natural sleep hormone, was completely ineffective, and this is for tiny deviations from our normal rhythm. So, what does this mean for space exploration? Let me paint you a picture of the worlds we're actually going to encounter out there. When we think about habitable exoplanets, we're not talking about Earth 2.0. We're talking about worlds that are utterly alien in their temporal rhythms. Take the TRAPPIST-1 system, 7 Earth-sized planets orbiting an ultra-cool dwarf star just 40 light-years away. These planets are so close to their star that they're tidally locked, meaning one side faces permanent day while the other faces eternal night. For the planets that aren't completely locked, their years, their orbital periods, range from 1.5 days to 20 days. Imagine trying to live on a world where a complete year happens in less time than it takes you to get over jet lag from a cross-country flight. Or consider Proxima Centauri b, the closest potentially habitable exoplanet to Earth. It orbits its star every 11.2 days. If it's tidally locked, there's no day-night cycle at all, just permanent light on one side and permanent darkness on the other. If it's in a spin-orbit resonance like Mercury, its solar day could stretch for months or years. Either way, any human settlement there would face what researchers call catastrophic systemic failure if we tried to survive with our Earth-evolved biology intact. The very concept of a day as we understand it, a cyclic environmental fluctuation in light and temperature, simply doesn't exist on most potentially habitable worlds. This brings us to our second major insight, the revolutionary field of synthetic chronobiology. Now, if the problem is that our biological clocks are hardwired for Earth, then the solution isn't to change the alien worlds, it's to change our clocks. And this isn't some far future fantasy. Scientists are doing this right now in laboratories around the world. They're literally engineering new biological timekeeping systems from scratch. Here's how it works. Your biological clock operates on what's called a transcription-translation feedback loop. Basically, certain genes get turned on. They produce proteins. Those proteins accumulate and eventually shut down their own production. Then they decay away and the cycle starts again. The timing of this cycle, about 24 hours, is determined by how long it takes for these proteins to degrade. But here's the breakthrough. Scientists have figured out how to engineer these protein decay rates. By modifying how quickly the clock proteins break down, they can tune the biological clock to run on any cycle they want, 10 hours, 40 hours, whatever the local planetary environment demands. The proof of concept experiments are absolutely mind-blowing. Researchers at Harvard Medical School have successfully created a transplantable circadian clock. They took clock proteins from cyanobacteria, ancient microbes that photosynthesize, and transplanted them into E. coli bacteria that don't normally have any circadian rhythm at all. The result? E. coli with a functioning 24-hour biological clock. But here's the kicker. Because these are synthetic systems, they can be programmed to run on any cycle. Scientists at UC Merced have even built these clockworks into artificial cells, synthetic vesicles loaded with clock proteins that maintain programmable rhythms for days on end. Now imagine applying this to human space colonization. Before sending humans to a tidally locked world or a fast-orbiting TRAPPIST-1 planet, we could engineer bespoke agricultural crops with custom-built genetic oscillators perfectly calibrated to the local exoplanetary cycle. We could modify the essential microbes in our gut microbiome to operate on alien time. And ultimately, through advanced gene therapy technologies like CRISPR, we could potentially modify the human circadian pacemaker itself, replacing that rigid 4-billion-year-old 24-hour Earth constraint with a tunable modular timing architecture. But synthetic chronobiology is just the beginning of a much larger paradigm shift in how we think about space colonization. For decades, our approach has been dominated by terraforming, the idea that we should modify alien environments to be more Earth-like, build thick atmospheres, melt the polar ice caps, create Earth-like temperatures and pressures. But the reality is that terraforming is both economically impossible and technically unfeasible for most worlds. It would take thousands to millions of years and require resources on a planetary scale. Instead, scientists are embracing something called Pantropy, the deliberate biological, genetic, and cybernetic modification of humans to thrive in pre-existing extraterrestrial environments. Rather than changing the world to suit us, we change ourselves to suit the world. And this approach integrates beautifully with synthetic biology, allowing us to work with living systems that are self-replicating, self-repairing, and capable of incredibly sophisticated chemical transformations. Instead of shipping massive quantities of building materials from Earth, we could engineer bacteria to literally grow radiation-shielding building materials from local soil. Instead of terraforming Mars's perchlorate-contaminated regolith, we could engineer bacteria that eat perchlorates and release clean water in the process.
This leads us to our third major insight, the broader implications for humanity's future. When we start down the path of synthetic chronobiology and Pantropy, we're not just solving technical problems, we're fundamentally redefining what it means to be human. Some of the proposals being seriously discussed in the scientific literature sound like science fiction, but they're grounded in real biology. Genetically engineering human skin to perform photosynthesis, creating chlorophyll-like substances that would allow colonists to generate metabolic energy directly from starlight, replacing our iron-based hemoglobin with copper-based hemocyanin, like you find in mollusks and arthropods, which could function at much lower temperatures and expand our thermal survival range. Engineering radiation resistance by incorporating genes from polyextremophile organisms that can survive massive doses of cosmic radiation. But here's where things get really profound. If we modify humans for specific exoplanetary environments, we're creating what could be called biological exile. Imagine humans engineered to survive the high gravity and unique atmospheric pressure of a particular world. They might become physiologically incapable of surviving anywhere else, effectively preventing them from ever returning to Earth. We're talking about creating specialized human subspecies, each adapted to their particular cosmic niche. This raises profound ethical questions about autonomy, identity, and what rights we have to modify future generations for environments they didn't choose. And then there's the ultimate question. Is biological Pantropy just a stepping stone to something even more radical? Many researchers believe that the extreme hostility of interstellar environments might eventually push us toward abandoning biological form altogether. Mind uploading, transferring human consciousness into radiation-hardened computational substrates would instantly solve every problem we've discussed. No need for oxygen, food, circadian rhythms, or radiation shielding. But this raises profound questions about consciousness, identity, and whether a digital copy of your mind would really be you or just a philosophical zombie that thinks it's you. Let me leave you with 3 concrete takeaways from all of this. First, the biological clock problem is more severe and more immediate than most people realize. We're not talking about some far future issue. NASA is already conducting experiments to study how space affects human tissue at the cellular level. The Artemis II mission will carry samples of engineered human tissue around the moon to study exactly these kinds of chronobiological disruptions. This is happening now.
Second, synthetic biology is no longer just a research curiosity, it's a practical tool for space exploration. The technologies we've discussed are already working in the lab. Companies and space agencies are beginning to incorporate biological manufacturing and synthetic ecosystems into their long-term space colonization plans. The question isn't whether we'll use synthetic biology for space exploration, but how quickly we can scale these technologies. And third, we need to start having serious conversations about the ethics and philosophy of human enhancement for space. These aren't abstract thought experiments. They're practical decisions we'll need to make within decades, not centuries. How do we balance individual autonomy with species survival? What rights do we have to modify future generations? What does it mean to be human if we can consciously direct our own biological evolution? These questions will define the next chapter of human civilization. The universe is vast, hostile, and utterly indifferent to human biology as it currently exists. If we're serious about becoming a spacefaring species, not just sending a few explorers, but actually establishing self-sustaining colonies that could survive the eventual death of our sun, then we're going to have to become something more than human as we understand it today. We're going to have to become the deliberate architects of our own evolution, creating post-human lineages that are intimately adapted to the unique temporal and physical realities of their new planetary homes. It's a thrilling and terrifying prospect, but it might be the only path to a truly cosmic future.
That's all for today's episode of Mindcast. If this conversation has sparked your curiosity, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What aspects of synthetic chronobiology or Pantropy do you find most fascinating or concerning? How do you think we should approach the ethics of human modification for space? Send me your thoughts at hello@mindcast.tech or find us on social media. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of human biology, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with someone who appreciates big ideas. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the future of humanity might be more malleable than we ever imagined.